Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite. I'm very happy to be here with Inny Accioly, a great, lovely colleague from Federal Fluminense University. Thank you so much for being here, Inny. And also with Arie Kizel, ICPIC President, the International Council of Philosophical Inquiry with Children. Thank you so much, Arie. So maybe we talk a little before beginning to give some few minutes for people to come in. So how do you feel? Thank you for coming. Tell us something about you.
Okay. Hello, Inny. Hello, Walter. Shalom lekulam. Hello, everybody. I'm in Haifa, in the University of Haifa, which is on the northern part of Israel, actually 1 hour and a half from the border with Lebanon, our northern neighbors. And I'm very excited to be here with all the students from University of Haifa master degree program in pedagogical development of educational system. Shalom לכולם, אני שמח שאתם איתנו, and also Inny and Walter, and all our friends from ICPIC, which is the International Council of Philosophical Inquiry of Children. I know that many of you are here, and some of you, because of our differences, will see us afterwards on the recording. So welcome. Inny?
Wow, good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm very honored to be here with Walter, Arie. Thank you for this invitation, this opportunity to celebrate Paulo Freire, the centenary of our patron of the education in Brazil. I am in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. Estou no Brasil, aqui no Rio de Janeiro, são 9 horas da manhã. So, I am a professor at the Fluminense Federal University, na UF, and in the campus in Angra dos Reis, no campus de Angra dos Reis, which is a very touristic place. And I research in their fields of environmental education, grassroots movement, education policy analysis, and also international and comparative education. So yes, I've been studying and reading Paulo Freire, and I was so happy and excited to read Walter's book on Paulo Freire. It's a very, very important reading, especially at these dark times we are living in Brazil and in the world because of the pandemic. So thank you for you who are joining us in YouTube, and be welcome.
Lovely. Okay. I understand that you got COVID. Are you okay now?
Yes. The recovery is slow. I am still struggling with the symptoms, but I have to say that reading Walter's book made me feel very energized. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, yesterday I was preparing my speech and I felt so energized, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Inny. Thank you so much. But don't say it loud, because Bolsonaro is going to offer books to people thinking that he will recover everyone from COVID without vaccine.
I really thought that it should be a new initiative, read Walter books and COVID is behind you. Okay. So shall we start? Is it okay?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. I know from the chat that many of our students are, and your student is writing, and thank you for it. You can write questions and remarks and comments during our talk. We are very happy to read it, and also you can do it also in Hebrew if you want. and we will catch some of the questions later. So hello everyone. Formally, I'm very happy and very excited to open the lunch book event of our dear friend, Professor Walter Omar Kohan. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a unique event because it is an exciting collaboration on both sides of the world, actually in Brazil and in Israel, with the time differences, but we did it. So my name is Arie Kizel, and I'm a professor at the Faculty of Education at the University of Haifa and president of ICPIC. And I am very happy to see all of our guests from all over the world, and especially from Brazil and Haifa at this event. So we are happy to launch today Professor Walter Omar Kohan's new book, Paulo Freire, A Philosophical Biography, published lately by Bloomsbury in English. We will have today 3 speakers, Professor Inny Accioly, Walter by himself, and myself, and then we will open, as I said, for questions, remarks, comments. Feel free, we are among friends. So now I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, Inny. I read that you are an activist scholar. Inny is a professor of education at the UFF University in Brazil. I'm very happy to meet you here in Zoom, but I hope in the future face-to-face. So welcome. Inny develops project focused on connecting university and grassroots movements in Latin America, relating environmental education, as she said, anti-racism education, and indigenous and traditional knowledge. She is a researcher in the collective studies of Marxism and education and the group of study of environmental education and the research laboratory on state power and education. Fascinating, by the way. So Inny, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, I'm very happy and honored to be here. Good morning for everyone who is watching us on YouTube. I saw that are people from Australia and people from everywhere. I'm very happy. So firstly, I want to thank Walter for the invitation to celebrate Paulo Freire through the exercise of dialogue with you and with Arie. So I feel very happy and honored to be invited for taking time to dialogue, especially at this historical moment when we are witnessing articulated attempts to impose the dictatorship of the homogeneous thinking that creates common enemies. And the use of social media is widespread, it connects people, but contradictorily, there is no space for dialogue because we unlearned what means to be human. Dialogue is inherent to the way of existence proper to the human beings. And the capitalist way of existence dehumanizes us because it produces alienated relationships. Under capitalism, we are alienated from our fundamental characteristic as human, characteristic that differentiates us from animals. That is, the human being is a creative being that interacts with the environment, transforms the environment, and transforms itself in this process. Unlike animals, humans are able to be aware of their activity in the world. Our presence in the world is a historical presence. We construct history, and for this reason, we are able to reconstruct history. But under capitalism, we are alienated from ourselves, our body, our senses. We are alienated from nature. Nature is part of us. It is an inherent part of our existence. We are alienated from each other. We unlearned how to listen, how to be fully open, to be transformed in a real dialogue. So I thank Walter for the invitation to dialogue with your book, dialogue with you both, and with Paulo Freire around the 5 beginnings, as it's called in the book. 5 beginnings of a life path to be followed by those educators committed with transforming society, as Paulo Freire was. So the 5 beginnings suggested by Walter in his book are life, equality, love, errantry, and childhood. So I have to tell you that reading your book has already transformed me. I was infected with coronavirus. And in the last few days, I have been facing this fight that has caused many Brazilians and many people worldwide to lose their lives. And Walter's book on Paulo Freire invites the reader to think about life. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be alive? Does it mean only waking up, working, sometimes in a type of work that mortify us, working and thanking God market that we have a job in a country like Brazil, for example, a country where around 19 million people are going hungry. A country where more than half of the population are facing some level of food insecurity. So Walter's book on Paulo Freire reminds us about something very crucial on Freire's thought, that is the dignity of life. It's only possible to live with dignity if life with dignity is a reality for everyone all over the world. The attack on the dignity of life anywhere is an attack on life everywhere. So there is an ethical duty that needs to be assumed by critical educators who enjoy privileged conditions. This ethical duty of actively take a side, not being neutral, because it's not possible to exist without taking a political position. Marx was one of the authors who influenced Paulo Freire, as Walter's book points out. And I am quite sure that Freire would agree with the words of the Marxist author Antonio Gramsci when he says, "I hate the indifferent. I believe that life means taking sides. One who is really alive can be nothing if not citizen and partisan. Indifference is lethargy. It is parasitism. It is cowardice. It is not life. Therefore, I hate the indifferent. Indifference is the dead weight of history. Indifference plays an important role in history. It plays a passive role, but it does play a role. It is fatality. It is something that cannot be counted on." These are Gramsci words that dialogue with Paulo Freire's understanding of life and love. It is with love that one person committed with the dignity of life go to the streets to march, as happened in Brazil some weeks ago on May 26th, when in the face of more than 450,000 deaths from coronavirus, thousands of people marched against the Bolsonaro government, marched for vaccine in the arm and food on the plate of all Brazilians. Love is against all barriers and breaks the boundaries that scoundrels impose on people. Love makes us strong so that we can bravely march against the blind crowd that supports the fascist and genocide government that is in power in Brazil, that was in power in the US, and that are gaining power elsewhere. In these dark times, it is with love that one dare to dream, dare to go against the deniers who deny life and the will to live. Because the true will to live is an affirmation of everyone's life, because everyone has the right to live with dignity. And the denial of dignity denies my being, my humanity. Love is rebellion against death, because love is life and wants pulsating life in all beings. Love is courage and commitment to fight against oppression. And Walter's book, inspired by Freire, states this, that capitalism makes it impossible to truly love. So, love requires what Paulo Freire called appropriate anger. Appropriate anger against dehumanization provoked by capitalism. Dehumanization that makes inequality seems natural, normal. And now the coronavirus pandemic established locally and globally the new normality that separates, on one side, those ones who have access to vaccines and healthcare, and on the other side, those ones who are left to die without the prospect of being vaccinated and without places in hospital for receiving medical treatment. Among educators, the new normality put on one side those who teach their online courses with no major adversity, and on the other side, those educators from the global peripheries where the internet and computers are privileged for the field. The coronavirus pandemic unveils that inequality and intrinsic dehumanization are capitalist normality. And one of the fundamental postulates of education for Paulo Freire is the ontological equality of all humans. In his travels, his wanderings around the world, Paulo Freire could observe that the world is too excessively unequal to not do anything. Inspired by Freire, Walter's book affirms that the educators wanders the world to show it that it can always be different than it is. The teachers walks the world wandering on the path of a political education that is inspired by the belief that the world can be otherwise, and so that the world becomes so. So it is necessary to dare to fail, so that we can construct the untested feasibility, a future open to possibilities not yet experimented with. As Paulo Freire affirms, there is no authentic utopia apart from the tension between the denunciation of a present becoming more and more intolerable, and the announcement of a future to be created, built politically, aesthetically, and ethically by us, women and men. So this permanent tension between denunciation and announcement is very important to construct and reconstruct history, because history cannot be immobilized. At this point, Walter, in his book, makes us reflect on childhood from a very interesting perspective. He says that childhood is not something to be educated, it is something that educates. Childhood is a way of looking to the future with eyes wide open. Childhood is a way of inhabiting the present, of being entirely present in the present, as if time were just time, embodying the now, as if we were only children, as if the future was just one other form of the present. In childhood, there is not much past, and there is a wide open future, undefined. We must fight to remake the future, and in this fight to remake ourselves anew. But this fight must be full of curiosity, joy, vitality, sensibility, and quietude. So, to conclude my speech, Walter's book reminds us that fighting to transform society is the duty of all educators, and it is necessary to dare to dream, dare to love, have the audacity to make mistakes, the audacity to wander, to march, to protest. It is necessary to dare to live a life committed to the dignity of life, and therefore committed to equality. So thank you.
Thank you, Inny. Well done. So after so much fire, light, and love, I'm really honored to give my talk. And thank you for your great words and really inspiring. Are you sure that you got COVID? Because you have a lot of strength. So thank you, really, thank you. So first of all, I would like to open my words with a warm greeting to my friend, our friend, Walter, on his new book. This is not only a very readable book, and it is readable, but it is also an important one. This is not a biographical book, although the subtitle is a philosophical biography. In my view, this is an integrative, almost genealogical work on several pillars concerning Paulo Freire's important work. The book before us is a unique journey into one of the most political, pedagogical, and philosophical figure in Latin America. A man who influenced the world and connected two valuable factors, pedagogy and criticism. So much have been written about Paulo Freire. Actually, entering the field of Freire, one will find out that it has been flowed endlessly, and yet, in recent years, Walter has managed to discover in this field more and more important factors that are still significant. A few years ago, Walter published an important article on the relationship or non-relationship between Paulo Freire and Matthew Lipman, the founder of Philosophy for Children. In my view, it was one of the most important articles in philosophy of education, analyzing wisely the connection or disconnection between these two significant figures. Over the years, Walter wrote about Freire and gave us a corpus of papers. This time, in this book, Walter seeks to connect 5 themes that demonstrate well Freire's own world about trust in people, his faith in men and women, and the creation of a world in which it will be easier to love. So let's talk about love and the lovely chapter that Walter dedicated to, chapter 3. Walter connected Freire, love, and Erich Fromm, and therefore 3 forms of dimensions of love: theoretical knowledge, practice, and constant concern. During the last years, I wondered about the connection between love and good pedagogy regarding philosophy for and with children. Unfortunately, I didn't observe love as the main factor of education as a whole and pedagogy in particular. It's not that I think that love is not important, but even the word love by itself seems to me always too banal as a kind of a popular phrase that actually educators love to use but do not really understand. I know it's me and it belongs to me. But during and after reading the lovely chapter of Walter's on love, it opens in me, and I hope that in you, to understand, or the understanding. Walter's links Freire's concept of love as a condition for performing good pedagogy. The connection can be summarized as a basic condition, a primary condition that is expressed in the fact that if there is no love, there is oppression. Or if there is oppression, there is no love. And I want to add, if there is oppression, there is no free education, no free philosophy, as a condition for education and emancipation. The other connection that Walters does is the connection between education and love. In Walter's word, through education, one can create a world where it's less difficult to love. These are lovely words, and it really summarizes it. I must say I'm not optimistic, Walter. Seeing educator and following Inny's, fire words. So seeing educators around the world who accept without criticism, unfortunately, the demands of governments and even internalize those demands into their educational work, I ask myself, you, and if Paulo Freire is present here in any form, him, should we not first teach the ability to rebel on the path to love? It's a question. This is a very significant question as I try to define today's educational situation as a pedagogy of fear, meaning fear controls many political and educational dimensions of our daily lives, unfortunately. But from reading this remarkable chapter in your book, dear Walter, another structure emerged. Love as a meta-structure or primary condition for revoking fear from pedagogy and education. So love is an eliminator of fear, if you will, which is okay in my view. I can accept it. So I try to be optimistic, but I have a hard time with it, especially knowing the political forces that also Inny described in Brazil, and I guess that also in Latin America, but also the political forces working over time in my region and in my country specifically, and elsewhere in Brazil, as you mentioned, by the way, in your book, Well Written. The book includes, as Inny mentioned, 5 chapters. Each one presents a vital work and world of knowledge, principle, history, and connects them to the current reality. To conclude, I would like to refer to the chapter that Walter wrote about childhood. I'm happy that our graduate students are present here with us today. They are studying at the Philosophy with Children seminar in the Faculty of Education at the University of Haifa. They learn about dialogue, community of philosophical inquiry, Lippmann and Sharp, philosophy for children and with children, and they even practice via Zoom communities where philosophical ideas are explored. This is the time to thank the Lauder Family Foundation that supports this seminar, and my dear colleague Dr. Nava Bar for being such a great partner in this seminar, and our Arab and Jewish students. The University of Haifa is a university of a joint cultural learning. Many of our students are from the Arab sector, the Druze sectors, and other sectors, and not just Jews, which became a really dialogical community. You are all so great during our meeting. I'm sure that all the readers and our students will find great interest, as I told you, in another chapter, the one on childhood. Walter diagnoses that childhood is not a central theme in Freire's writing. However, Walter decided to dive into the text of Letter to Christina and links Freire the man to Freire the child. Very original, by the way. He does it in a respectful manner along with an investigation of additional letters that are all very fascinating by the world. The ideas in this chapter are so important and lively to all of us today, philosophers, mentors, and especially practitioners. So finally, I would like to offer you here a little gift that I've got from Walter in this chapter. It's a quote from the page 149. The place that Freire gives to childhood helps us to see the childhood cross the chronos of our life, our past, our present, and our future, and also crosses our other times that we experience across to different logics. We can also perceive that there is childhood in otherness, in plants, in animals, in school, in the world. There is a childlike life waiting to be felt, heard, and fed. There is much childhood in the world waiting to be awakened, revealed by conjunctive and connective children. Walter concludes by writing, "This is my childlike reading of childhood in Freire's in his childhood, on his childlike passion. Who knows, perhaps readers of the present chapters are now just a little more attentive to childhood, to their childhood, and to the childhoods of the world." So thank you very much again, Walter, for this important book, and congratulations from the Holy Land.
Thank you so much, Arie and Inny. I'm very touched and moved by your beloved interventions. I was thinking in many things while you were speaking. First, I remember something that French philosopher Alain Badiou says about love, because for both of you, love was a very important theme and chapter, and what touched you. And Badiou says something very nice, that he says that someone who does not begin with love will never understand anything in philosophy. So it seems to be a condition, because philosophy is also about love. Philosophy has love inside. So taking care of love, thinking about love, practicing love, I think it's a kind of condition for a philosophical education. So I'm very happy and touched that you have experienced that. I was also touched by the differences between where you, Arie, and Inny are, and I'm very close to Inny. Of course, I am in the same context, and it's incredible. But we are in a context where COVID has been completely underestimated, uncared, and where life has been misconsidered by the Brazilian government. While Arie, he has a green passport, as he has shown us, and in a country where more than 70% of the people has been vaccinated. So there's a lot of contrast, and also, as Inny pointed out, unfortunately, the pandemic has been used to foster inequalities and injustice and the unhappy and unloved dimensions of the world. I was also very touched by Inny's energy and lovely presence. I met her not so far ago in Canada in an online. So it was during the pandemic, in an online meeting about Freire at the University of Calgary. No, not Calgary. In Quebec, I think it was.
Concordia.
And I was so much impressed about the way she could transmit her energy in another language, which is very difficult. So there might be people with Inny's energy, but it's very rare to find someone speaking from the heart as Inny does in another language, in a foreign language. So I thank you so much, Inny, and especially because you have very recently passed through COVID and you are still affected. And so if my book helped you pass it in a better way, that if that would be the only effect of the book, I'm very happy to have written the book for that. And thank you for being here. And also, Arie, a dear friend, thank you so much for bringing here the world of philosophy for children and philosophical inquiry with children, which is so meaningful for us, which is part of our history, and we are working hard. And also for bringing the connection between Paulo Freire and or the disconnection, as you said, because I think that's one important work or task of us. So to see things, to try to see things in a more deep way, or in a more caring way, even in a more loving way. So because that's what I also remember, that it's in the chapter you mentioned about love. I was also very sensitive to Badiou's book on life, and he defines love as the belief in indifference. Then he associates love with a kind of hospitality to difference, with a kind of sensitivity to difference. So I think, as also Inny pointed out, that this is more than ever important and necessary today. And so also Badiou's understand love as they believe in the reborn of the world. So I think this is related to hope and utopia, as Inny pointed out. So I think that it's a kind of condition also of educators everywhere. When we speak about love, I think we bring together difference, we bring together hope, and we bring together utopia. So I think that's one of the nicest thing of being together, thinking together, and talking together, that in a sense we are recreating, rebirthing, and reopening our lives to difference, to hope, and to utopia, and we need that more than ever. So I'm just thankful to both of you and to the people. It's funny, we have people, as Inny pointed out, from Australia, but also from Turkey, from Mexico, from Scotland, from Argentina. So I'm from Brazil and Israel, of course. And I'm very thankful to all of you that are here. And I hope we can talk a little more. Maybe Inny and Arie want to react to my words or to both words of you. So I think we are with friends, among friends, and so we can do whatever we want, that it will be a hopeful activity, and I hope also inspiring for those who are with us.
Inny?
Wow. It's been very hard to be utopian at this present time in Brazil. And when I got COVID, it was almost impossible to not thinking about the sense of life, because many people died from this disease. It's a very dangerous disease. And I have a very privileged condition of having access to healthcare. I had access to vaccine, and the vaccine saved me. So when I was suffering from the symptoms of COVID, it was very difficult to read and to think and to do anything, because the disease makes us very weak. And when I could sit and start reading Walter's book, I felt so much energy that I read the book on 2 days, 2 days reading the book. And I felt so energized that I thought I must be there dialoguing about this book. It was a very difficult choice, because I'm still recovering. I am not with my full energy. So yesterday I was all day planning my speech and thinking about the book and reflecting about the thoughts that you bring in the book. And I was so excited and so energized that in the end of the day I was full of love and passion for life, and I could feel the sense of my life, my being, my presence in this world, and the sense of being alive and the purpose of being alive for me. So and now here with you, I am not with my full energy, but I could take the least of the energy that I have here to talk to you. And I am so happy that I am struggling with the disease, with the symptoms, but I still feeling very energized, and I hope that this energy keep with me, helping me to recover soon.
It will. Thank you so much, Inny. You're very special, and we are very happy that the book provokes such a nice relationship, such a nice overcoming of the disease, and really it makes you a different person. It makes you take energy from a disadvantage, from a disease, and make a strength. I'm sure you'll overcome this energy much more stronger than you already are.
Inny, I want to share with you Shoshi's written. She wrote it in Hebrew. You will see it. I will try to translate. She says, how much is difficult to find love inside this reality, which is so characterized by inequality. So it's very excited. She wrote, she's a teacher and an official in the Ministry of Education in our district. So it's so excited to hear that even the thought of love or about love is giving you so much hope and strength, and actually enable you to cope with the challenges. So this is Shoshi's world. I guess that most of us in Israel don't have it. We had difficulties teaching in Zoom, staying at home, but I can tell you that although the state of Israel is actually better than Brazil in many sense in the health, you still could find that people from non-privileged people, from layers of society that are usually more crowded and less educated and so on, was usually, I don't have numbers, more infected. It means that worldwide, I think that it's always like this, unfortunately. And this is also connected to Freire and his great work, okay? Usually non-privileged, as you mentioned, you're privileged, you got access to health and vaccine and so on.
Yeah, thank you. Shoshi's intervention makes me remember the last part of the Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It's the last sentence, which is interesting because it is not translated in the English edition as such. That's very interesting, and that's an interesting, I would say, an interesting unfold of the translation, because this translation that was made by two friends and with love, lots of love, by Jason Wozniak and Sam Rocha, which are dear friends. We made a hard work of trying to find all the quotes and the reference to Freire in the English world, which is not so easy, not so direct, because some books have been translated differently. For example, there are some books that have been put together, or some books that are part of the books, some others that don't exist in Portuguese but exist in English because they have put together chapters, whatever. But one thing very interesting that we have discovered is that the last sentence of the Pedagogy of the Oppressed is not translated. I don't know why, but the last paragraph has disappeared from the Portuguese edition to the English. It is then we found it is in the preface that Paulo Freire wrote. He mentions, but it's taken out from the book. And I want to read to you, especially to Shoshi, because it's very related to her comment. So Paulo Freire says, in the last sentence of the Portuguese edition, original edition, he says, if nothing remains of these pages, something at least we expect to remain, to be there, our faith in the people, our faith in human beings, in the creation of a new world where it will be less difficult to love. So if nothing remains, at least it remains the faith in a new world where it could be less difficult to love. That's very meaningful for me. So, because in a sense, it's about the new world. So in a sense, we need to create, to invent something new, because it is impossible, as Inny said, to love. If love has to do not only with our individual life, but to collective life, to the life of everyone, no one excluded from it. And also a love where love has a main role. So, especially in education and for educators, it's impossible an educational love, an educational world that does not begin with love. So thank you so much, Shoshi, and thank you so much, Freire, for not renouncing to a new world where it will be less difficult to love.
So do you think that the disease in Brazil, for example, erased the kind of, I found in the word of Freire that you quote, a desire for solidarity and perhaps a responsibility as a part of solidarity. So did you find that during this time there is increase in social solidarity?
Inny, would you like to?
Yes, in some sense, yes. There were many actions of solidarity from universities, unions, donating food, supplies for people on favelas, on peripheries. There were some actions, solidarity actions from some NGOs who went to the favelas to donate food, donate supplies, masks and sanitizers. But also the polarization became more difficult. And for example, the Supreme Court prohibited the police to make operations, police operation in favelas during the pandemic. And the police did very, very bloody police actions in favelas during the pandemic, as an act of attacking the Supreme Court decision, killing many people, and many people in the society supported this police action. So Bolsonaro did many public speeches without wearing masks, speeches saying that the virus is nothing but a little flu, that the pandemic is nothing, that people should go to the streets without masks, without taking care of their lives. Bolsonaro put on one side the economy and the other side life, and putting life as a less important thing. And it's impossible to think of economy without life. So life must be the principle. Life must be the principle to guide economy and not the contrary. So, but many people still supporting Bolsonaro, and many people died because they believed in Bolsonaro's speeches. They believed that the disease was not dangerous. They believed in the chloroquine treatment. So it's very sad many people died because there was no medical supplies in the hospitals, like oxygen in the hospitals. Many hospitals run out of oxygen for patients who were under treatment, and run out of medications. So it's been a very, very hard times in Brazil, because polarization is becoming stronger. And next year is there are elections for the presidency. So it's being hard, because during the pandemic, people were thinking about elections, and we should prioritize life and prioritizing facing the pandemic and guaranteeing vaccines for everyone, but it's not. This is not happening. So I think that we, in some kind, at some point, we unlearned solidarity. That's very sad.
It's very interesting. I want to share with you in few words the situation in Israel that we can see. It's a short summary, just in few sentences. On the one hand, the Israeli society, which is a kind of, we are tribes of ultra-Orthodox Jews, Arabs, and so on. So we actually were witnessing differences in culture, of attitudes towards science and information, scientific information. For example, Jews ultra-Orthodox that decided to send the children to schools, although the pandemic was there. On the one hand, saying that it's very important to keep study the Torah, the Holy Scripture and so on, which is quite important for them. Actually, it's a sign that God will help on the one hand, and on the second hand is the belief that we don't have to stop learning, even though there is a huge pandemic outside. So this is one on the one hand. The Israeli society, we can summarize quite now, was very critical, and this is very Israeli by nature. So there were many demonstrations against the political regime of Netanyahu and his government, not concerning the pandemic, concerning the other thing. So it was very interesting. While the pandemic was there, the political awareness was there already, also, which was very interesting to handle, mass demonstration with restriction, with the understanding that we should express whatever opinion you have, you should express yourself. So this is very interesting. And the third factor, which is very important, and many of the press didn't mention, is going back to database, scientific database, information, reliable information. So it's the time, I guess that this is also the process in the US, the Trump, anti-science, and the Democrats pro-science. It's not pro-life against life also, but so there are a lot of scientists here, doctors and others, academics, whatever, that went on the media to offer not just advice, data, pure data, in order that the public will learn, will study, will know, okay? The only differences between, not the only, but the main differences between Bolsonaro and Netanyahu is that Netanyahu understood well the vaccine and what we have to do against it. I mean, in the meaning of the vaccine, So these figures are very different in their, in this manner. But so I guess that just to summarize it, that if you can look at the Israeli public, you can say that they keep the community character, religious, secular, whatever, but they were united in solidarity on the one hand, and believing the sciences mostly. So the result was less objection to the vaccine that other places we witnessed around the world. So
I think, Arie, there's a comment from Nurit.
yes. So Nurit Eyal, she's our former students in our master's degree. She's teacher for theater. She's working with children. She wants to have a combination between P4C and theater lessons for young children. She's saying that in our last meeting of the community of inquiry philosophy for children that she did in 3rd grade, the children chose to discuss the question. Okay. Children ask, it's a lovely question. Does the doctors that develop or the scientists that develop the vaccine actually love people? So this was the question, because okay, so this was the question, and it's a lovely question. The children, I think, know how to differentiate between sometimes emotion or the drive by emotion, I mean love, okay, and the drive to be a pure scientific. So this is very nice.
Yeah, I think it's very nice. I also think Nurit might know the Brazilian theatrologist Augusto Boal, who created the theater of the oppressed, and which in many senses it has lots of dialogues with Freire. Freire's most famous book was the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and Boal's book most famous is the Theater of the Oppressed. So I think Nurit might know Augusto Boal. If not, I could firmly suggest her to read him. He's not only about the theater of the oppressed, but then what he called the forum theater, and especially participatory democratic theater and politically engaged and committed theater against oppression and towards justice and democracy. So it's very interesting. Yeah. But yes, the question.
Yes, one of our students asked me this morning to ask you if during the writing of the book or preparing the book, yes, Nurit is answering yes, of course, she knows it. Okay, thank you. To Nurit, did you find something new that you didn't know about Freire?
Oh yeah, lots of things. I mean, I think it's in. I could say everything. I mean, because I remember it depends on how you organize and how you write a book. For example, in my case, it's not that I know before writing what I'm going to write. So it's something that comes through the process of writing. So, for example, I didn't know about the 5 principles beginnings before writing, so they came through the process of writing. And even the letters that you mentioned. So I think it's how you relate to writing. And in my case, writing is not like putting into words what I already know, but it's an exercise of thinking and putting into question what I know, what I think. So I think it's something that comes all over the writing, all over the writing experience, especially when you don't write to transmit something, but to provoke also in the readers the experience you feel the reading of Freire provokes. So it's about like sharing a philosophical experience that, in a sense, it's an unlearning experience or unknowing, so that you begin to doubt about what you think you knew, and you open the door to know differently or to think differently. So that's I think it's I could say all that is in the book is something that I have the opportunity to think while writing, And I would like to comment something on Nurit, the child of Nurit, the child's question of Nurit about if the question was if the doctors who created the vaccine felt love, right?
Really love people.
Really love people. That's very nice, because it seems to be really seems to be showing that there's a kind of opposition between creating a vaccine and loving people. And it's interesting because many would say precisely it is because it was a condition to love people to create the vaccine. But it's interesting that the child sees there where we see a condition, because we think that science have to do with taking care and loving, that it's interesting that the child sees an opposition. And I wonder if this have to do with the fear, for example, we all feel about vaccines. I myself always have tried to escape from vaccines till COVID. So I think there's something really deep about how we relate with the science, with disease, and where love emerged from, and how does love express itself. It seems that for that child, it's difficult to see that love might express itself with a vaccine.
Yes, I'm wondering if this question was phrased by, let's say, teenager, is he or she would ask, is the condition is making money out of the vaccine? Is love as a precondition, as a primary condition, is connected to childhood? Because I think that and I'm not trying to be cynical, I think that a lot of teenagers and adults are connected to the rough, aspect of life, which means money, access, and so on. So even though we know that a lot of doctors and sciences are really loving people and entering their profession from the passion of helping and assisting and rescuing and so on. So this is really, I want to comment to your, and this is also connected to the question of my students. I think that the way that you describe your rereading of is sometimes a counter-reading. When you have to read second time and 3 times, and we know it as academics, that sometimes the second reading or the third reading, you should liberate yourself. I wrote about liberation of practitioner lately to childhood and philosophy. So Walter had to liberate himself from a kind of conceptual, sometimes prison of Freire in order to see fresh Freire. Is it like this?
Yeah. I think that you're touching something very important about what does it mean to read. What's the meaning of reading, and how many forms of reading? And that's what we sometimes call reading is not really reading. So that sometimes we kind of read without reading. We read already knowing before reading what we are going to read. So we don't read, we just confirm. So that's I think a condition, or I would say at least to make what we can call a philosophical or educational reading, so that you cannot know before reading what you are going to read. And this is especially difficult with Freire, and Inny might confirm this, because Freire is, everyone seems to know what Freire said. So we are all experts in Freire. Freire is quoted everywhere, these slogans of the pedagogy of the oppressed. So it seems that he is more quoted than read. So people, when you say Paulo Freire, you don't need to say anything else, because everyone knows what Freire said, and many without reading. So I would be very happy if the book at least works as an invitation, as a stimulus for people to read and reread Freire, because there's so much there. There's a world. There's a world.
I think that the way that you describe reading a text, it's like reading people, by the way. So it's the same, for example, in Israel, because we are very multicultural society, and a lot of Arab, like in the United States and Latin America, Arab students are coming, students, women, with the headscarf and so on. And our black immigrants from Ethiopia, Jews, and so on. And we are even the Jewish community is very different. I'm more European style, even though I was born in Israel and so on. So at the first sight, as like you said, your first reading of a text, you see an Arab and a Jew and a black and a white and so on, with all the stereotypes and the preconditions and so on. And the second reading, by the way, during our community in the university, is when you meet actually the text, I mean, the person. And then he's naked, okay? And now he is himself, not the performance, not the interface with all the,
stereotypes.
Yes. And
exactly, yeah. And I think something very important from Freire is that first to the reading of the words is the reading of the world. So that each reading of the word presupposes a reading of the world. And I think this is what we were saying before about words, and you were saying now about people, is very important about the world. Because many people seem that they know everything about the world, and they have like a stereotype vision of the world, very dogmatized, very uncritical, related to what Inny was saying about the social media, fake news. So I think people need to reread the world, not just the words. We need to open these closed and dogmas about the world and how we can live together.
And something that is interesting in Paulo Freire is when he says that, I think it's in the dialogue with Ira Shore, he says that the professors, scholars, sometimes ask students to read many, many books during a course, but they don't take the time to really understand the reading. So when you read a text and you read a second time, third time, you have to be open to the text, so you can make the connections between the text and the world. But because if you don't do these connections, there is no purpose for the reading. Why reading if we cannot connect the reading with the world, with the purpose to transform society? Because if we read with the purpose to show people that we are very intellectual, we are very smart, we are not critical educators. We are only a person that wants to have the label of critical educators. But so it's very interesting the respect and the importance that Paulo Freire gives to reading, the act of reading. And nowadays, when we are living times of fake news, times in Brazil, the functional illiteracy is very high. And we see people that read memes, WhatsApp messages, and they don't have the curiosity to investigate, to check if that is true message, if it's not true, if it's fake, to understand if that is a fact or opinion. So it's very dangerous for democracy when people lose their curiosity to towards the knowledge, curiosity to understand, to deeply understand something. To deeply understand, for example, the coronavirus disease. Many people give opinions about the disease and spread his or her opinions and influence people. And people are dying because of opinions that have no relationship with reality, no relationship with science is not neutral. And Paulo Freire states this very well, that knowledge is not neutral, science is not neutral. So we always have to be skeptical toward, for example, the scientists, because maybe they want to develop something, medication, sell medications to earn money and to make profit. So yes, we have to always be critical, criticize everything. So it's part of the critics, the act of curiosity, reading, researching, trying to deeply understand some topics. So we are living times that opinions are more important than knowledge and facts. So this is very dangerous for democracy, because people spread opinions, and opinions influence political options, influence people who don't take vaccines, people who goes to the street having faith that God or some medication like chloroquine will save them. So this is very dangerous. So Paulo Freire is really important, because he says that it's important to read images too. When we see a meme, we have to be the capacity of critically reading an image, a meme, an image, photograph. So literacy, it's not about reading words, but also about reading images. And at this time we are in a world of a very visual world with many images. So Paulo Freire also brings us the importance of critical reading.
Yes, I agree with you. I just want to end by saying that I'm very connected to what you said. There is a huge application of your words into education, because it needs a lot of critical literacy, and even critical visual literacy. Visualization in education is the issue for the last 20 years. It became an issue in the last years because of the apps, Instagram and so on, and TikTok and others. And the way that politicians are using it in order to manipulate, public opinion. It's faster and so on. But it's actually not far from the propaganda that the Nazis did in other, issues, which included, visualization. But the big fight is the fight of education in early childhood, and this is actually the place of children, of philosophy for children and with children, to develop the abilities, the skill, the basic skill, and also parents, by the way, to analyze the big picture, because it's so synthesized, it's so fast today, and it's so manipulated that you actually, and the COVID was a good evidence for it. You cannot actually build the picture. It changed a bit, a minute after you build it for yourself. But still, we can do it. And I guess in Israel, for example, and I was very critical of what is happening here, most of the public had the image. Perhaps because we are in a kind of a fight, of an intense fight for our life daily, that we know how to build the information picture, or because we are Israelis and very improviser by culture and so on. I don't know, okay? But it's still very hard, and there is a connection that Freire is in it. So in order to be very, educated, well readers, well writers, and so on, this is very important. It goes back to Freire, I guess.
Thank you so much, Arie. Thank you so much, Inny. I think we are close to ending because of time, not because we would like, because we could continue ever and ever. But I don't know. I would like to thank you all again, and thank you especially Arie and Inny for being here, for being yourselves here, for being the way you are, and for expressing also your life and love while speaking about love and life in the book, and for such a lovely and livid intervention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all, and see you soon. Be well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody who joined us on Facebook, on YouTube, and yes, my last words is this book, the reading of Walter's book, made me remind the importance of daring to make mistakes, dare to love, dare to dream, dare to act, dare to protest, because as Paulo Freire said, the world is too excessively unequal to not do anything. So I keep this quote with me to have this audacity of doing, acting, protesting, and making mistakes, and then recognizing my mistakes in this process of reconstructing myself in the dialogue with my students, in the dialogue with children, in the dialogue with my colleagues. So yes, thank you for the opportunity of reading your book and the opportunity to be here dialoguing with you.
Thank you so much, Inny. Thank you so much, Arie. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you. תודה רבה.